Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Simple Investing. So Bitcoin's up and the miners are down. What the hell? Shouldn't they be this amazing investment vehicle that allows you guys to squeeze out more multiples than the underlying asset? Well, you guys, that's exactly what I'm going to address throughout this video. And later, I'm going to dive into some charts and show you guys some key levels that I'm eyeing on the Bitcoin miners. So make sure you guys stick around till the end of the video so you don't miss anything. If you enjoyed this video and would like seeing similar content in the future, then please do consider subscribing as well as hitting the like button. And now you guys, to answer the question on why Bitcoin is up and the miners are down. Well, you guys, Bitcoin and the miners don't always go in sync, okay? So sometimes there's periods of time when Bitcoin's really shooting up and the miners are just consolidating or they're going red, so they're dropping. And then there's periods of time when Bitcoin is consolidating and the miners are running. So it's very hard to say that the moment Bitcoin does a, let's say, 10% move that, the miners must do 20% or 30%. No, that absolutely doesn't have to mean anything. So to look at the previous cycle, you guys, just to gauge it with this cycle, kind of where we're at and what I'm thinking. Let's look at the previous cycle, so November, December of 2020. So Bitcoin was able to close and hold above its previous cycle's all-time high on December 20th. And you guys, that's the key. It's to close and hold above the previous cycle's all-time high. When were we able to do that this cycle? Well, we were able to do that on November 6th. So essentially, we're a month and a half ahead of schedule. And where part of the issue lays, I believe, is with Bitcoin shooting up 10,000 and people not believing that this move will hold. They think it's a pop and fade. Although in my opinion, I'd say Bitcoin is doing a beautiful consolidation in between 90 and 91,000, and it's establishing its next launch pad to surpass 100,000. And I think this will happen quicker than most people think. As in my opinion, this is a left translated cycle. And I know a lot of people online are saying that, the cycle is going to last till October or November of 2025. In my personal opinion, for Bitcoin peaking out, I believe we have about 2 to 4 months here. So for miners, they always peak out ahead of Bitcoin. So potentially they could already peak out within 2 months. So early January. Now time will tell. I mean, we'll look back at this and we'll see if I was right. But that's just my personal opinion. And if this were to be true, I really think that as Bitcoin approaches 100,000 and surpasses 100,000 here, I really do think a lot of these miners, they're going to fire on all pistons and they're going to put in their most aggressive leg up here throughout this cycle. Now, I personally think the miners that will benefit the most out of it are going to be the pure play Bitcoin miners, the hodlers, just as they have a larger hodl stash, and that's going to allow their stash to appreciate. And they've been kind of neglected throughout the last little bit here, and they've been losing to the second camp of miners, which is the AI and HPC miners, which I mean, first of all, have run harder than the pure play miners recently, and therefore, in my opinion, they're not going to run as hard here in the final leg. Not to say they won't, I just don't think they're going to run as hard as a pure play miner, but they're able to gather excitement out of different sectors and hype, such as AI, because they're AI HPC miners, which is a new camp of miners that came out this cycle. Obviously, their business model is very good as it has a lot of diversification, allows you to have multiple revenue streams, which will not only help them throughout the bull market, but also throughout the bear market versus a pure play miner. And then finally, the small and micro caps, as money will ripple throughout the space and people will try to maximize their gains and make even more here nearing the end of the cycle, the money will come from the large caps. So, the multi-billion to the, smaller billion cap, and finally 100 million market cap miners. And once it's done with 100 million, I mean, all you're left with is a small and nano caps. So you're going to be pouring money into names that are all below 100 million. And once the money hits these miners, I believe they're going to deliver an extremely steep last leg up. And that's going to be probably gain somewhere between 10 to 20x. I don't think that's impossible. And just to give you guys an example of what's possible and not possible within the penny stock world, well, you guys, a good example is BTC.cn. Now, this stock, I mean, it's been just bleeding and dropping. I mean, it's a good example of a falling knife. It dropped 99.9% since the previous bull run, and they've diluted, at very low levels. I mean, this stock looked like it was never going to move, and it pulled a 50x in about a month. So anything is possible, you guys. Anything can move, especially if the name has quality to it. If it actually got something underlying to the business, not just a pump and dump, then in my opinion, these should be rewarded and move even harder. So yeah, you guys, I really do think the next 2 months to 4 months are going to be an extremely exciting period of time. The miners most likely starting to move here in the next week to 2 weeks. So really, you guys, keep your eye out for it. Don't sleep on it. Don't get shaken out here in the final stages of preparing for the next leg up. And now let's dive on in and take a look at some of the charts. Okay, you guys, well, let's start with the Bitcoin chart, the underlying asset. So if we look at what I was mentioning earlier in the video, basically throughout the previous cycle, which was kind of what's going on here. So this was the cycle of 2017. Here was the low. That was on December of 2018. And then same with COVID, it hit this long-term trend line here, ascending trend line. And if we look at when we actually were able to pop and hold over this previous cycle high on meaningful volume, as well as multi-candle closes above that level, we were looking right here. So that was about December 16th. And after that point, yeah, just another consolidation, and then Bitcoin kind of took off. And as you guys can see, this final leg up here gets more and more aggressive. So the higher you go in the cycle and the further you are into the cycle, the more aggressive the move goes. And then here you obviously had that retrace and then the double top, which was something of a first kind in these cycles before. Each cycle at the end of the day kind of throws its own spin into it. But there is a lot of similarities between them, and you can kind of use previous cycles to gauge what's going to happen in the current one. Now, if we look at the current cycle, we had the low here of November of 2022. That was about 15,000, and now we're currently sitting at about 90,000. And if you look here on the candles, we got a bit of support here, I'd say. If Bitcoin is not able to break this trend line, and as you guys can see here, that's a trend line from the previous two tops that I drew out here, and it's an ascending trend line. So currently we got rejected off it, even though there's a volume spike, as you guys can see. I mean, Bitcoin's trying to pop through it, so it's just a matter of time before it gets the power and just blows right through it. So we've already had one touchdown of this level here of about 85,000, as well as we got the 10-day EMA creeping up here, which is around 86,000. So it's totally not out of the question for Bitcoin to bounce around in this area a little bit before we make the next leg up, which will take us, I would say, to probably about 100,000, as that's a psychological level, and then blow past that. So I do believe over the next week or so here, perhaps even less, this consolidation should conclude, and we'll be ready to take our next leg up. And now reflecting on how much was Bitcoin even able to do from the bottom to the top here. So let's take a measuring tool here, and from the bottom to the top, we are sitting at about 486%. So that's currently what Bitcoin is sitting at. And obviously, with the theory of the miners, they should be at least outperforming the underlying asset by 2 to 3x, as they are a leveraged play. So as we go through these charts, we'll see where the miners are sitting at currently, just to compare and see if indeed they are sitting to 2 to 3x up currently. And if not, then obviously it will be a catch-up trade going forward. Now, what am I seeing on Mara? Well, the first thing that I want to point out is this descending trend line here that has been affecting Mara for many years. We can see the first touch here happened in 2013, next touch happened here in 2015, and then finally last touch here happened at the end of the previous cycle, which was in November of 2021. So now if we were to hit that level or hit that descending trend line at some point early next year or very late this year, so let's say December, I mean, we'd be looking at about $45 for the share price of Mara. Now, a couple hurdles before we get there. Obviously, we'd be looking at levels of retracement first. So these are some gaps that it formed on the way up, and I'd say this gap is pretty much concluded. We've pretty much filled it here at 1973. If Bitcoin's price action remains steady or it starts moving to the upside, I think we're totally going to miss this gap here, and I'll just change it to the daily so you guys can see better. Gaps don't necessarily always have to fill, so this gap could totally wait till the next bear market to fill. So I wouldn't be too worried about this one, unless Bitcoin, I don't know, drops to 80,000 or something like that, loses its support at 85. So I would say for the most part, this has concluded, and you guys can see the buying pressure here. This candlestick, you can see that it's been bought up. So it's got quite a bit of a wick. So it's definitely been bought up on Friday. And on the way up here, before we challenge 45, I'd say the next levels of resistance here are 31 to 32. And those were from the peaks of December 23rd and February 2024. So once we blow through that, I'd say it's going to be a very quick trip up to that trend line. So we're going to be tapping $45 quite quickly there. And if we just do a bit of a measurement, and once we actually break out of this line, I'd say it's also fairly quick to reach 58. And obviously, if we can pass 58, then you're cutting through butter here. There's really not much resistance on the way up. But looking at the numbers, so we said Bitcoin was at about 500%. Let's just use a round number. It was 483, but let's just say 500. So if you're looking currently at Mara, I mean, Mara's sitting just at about 600%. So it's definitely not delivering on that theory of 2 to 3x. And as I said, they don't necessarily always have to run in tandem. Sometimes there can be delays, miners can be delayed, and then they do a very aggressive leg. And that's exactly what I think will be happening this cycle. So when we go to the first trend line here, that's about 1,400%. So it's almost 2x. And the 2x level would be sitting at, let's say, if Bitcoin were to hit 125,000, which is, I think, a fairly reasonable target, that would be an 8x for the underlying asset. So that would be about 16x for Mara. So Mara should be sitting at about $50. If we consider the multiple of 3x of the underlying asset, then we're looking at about 2,400%. So we'd be looking at about $73. So that just shows to you guys how high these miners could run if things get really fired up within the space. Now, obviously, miners have news, they have dilution, a lot of things that could bring them down. So I definitely think with all the dilution that's going to be coming on the way up, I think a target of 45 to 57 is very reasonable. So we're definitely going to have to observe it closer and see in the next week to 2 weeks how Mara starts behaving in this region, and if it really starts having that final vertical impulsive final leg into the bull run here. It is next. What I would like to point out is very similarly to Mara, which I don't think I pointed it out, but there's a lot of similarities in kind of this area right here before it started its final leg up, just kind of this stair stepping and chopping here, except obviously it happened on a much smaller level than it's happening now. But I would definitely relate it to this area here before they launch. And as you guys can see, RIOT, same thing without disappointment, just had this very aggressive, steep and final leg up into the end of the bull run here. Now within this cycle, RIOT is basically been trading within this flag pattern. It had a little bit of a fake out here, dropped out, but then it got right back into there. What are we looking at on RIOT? I personally don't follow this miner much, just don't like what's happening over there with the management and kind of how they've been running the company. So I personally do not own any RIOT, but what we had here, we had a gap here between 1385 and 1282, which is obviously already filled. And same as on Mara, you guys can see just the buying pressure, that huge candlestick, just this wick, it means it got bought up on Friday. And then we got a secondary gap here, which I most likely don't think will get filled, and that's between 1058 and 984. Now the first zones for RIOT to fight would be obviously part of this flag pattern here. It would have to basically on meaningful volume crack through this level here, so that any day now, I mean, that could be $15, could be a little less, but yeah, around this zone it would have to break out of that on meaningful volume. And as you guys could see here, when it was trying to break out through it last time, we had amazing volume. So that's exactly what you need to look for, except we obviously need daily candlestick closes over that descending trend line. Now the first roadblock here for RIOT will be these levels from these previous highs of this cycle, which would be from July 23rd, and then from February 24, 2024. So that's kind of what we'd be looking at breaking through. And once we get through that, then kind of your next stops, which I think are fairly reasonable targets, are $24 and $29. So for anyone who holds RIOT, I'd definitely be considering selling some at this point, as there's no return that, there's no guarantee that we're going to run past that. So definitely to be safe, and due to the diminishing returns because of dilution and all this stuff, I would consider selling at these levels. Now, if we were to calculate based off that 500 off of Bitcoin, what is RIOT sitting at? Well, it's actually sitting at below what Bitcoin's sitting at. It's about half of that. So for fair value of RIOT comparing to Bitcoin, I mean, you'd be looking at about $19 a share. And if you were to double that, then you're looking at about, well, what is that, around $33. So could it get that high? Absolutely. Never say never. I'd just be cautious with this one, as it definitely didn't get much love throughout the cycle. It does have a large hodl, so that could play in its favor. But yeah, until management changes the way they operate, I have no plans of owning any RIOT. CleanSpark. CleanSpark definitely got a little bit ahead of itself, and it had a very nice run here, produced a very nice return, and then had a huge retracement here to about $8. And it had a gap for the longest time ever that I actually personally thought would never get filled, but it definitely got filled, so that's good. It chopped around below that gap for quite some time, and then caught some of its power and momentum to the upside. Now, in terms of Clean Spark, I see this descending trend line here, which you could call a flag, a very big flag, and this ascending one right here, which I personally don't think we're going to tap throughout this bull run, throughout the bear market for sure. But basically what we'd be looking at is somehow getting through these levels, and there was a bunch of chop here, so I'd consider that a pretty tough level for it to chew through, and we got about halfway throughout it. Once we break out of that, we'll have to fight with this descending trend line, and once we're able to get above that descending trend line, there might be some minor resistance here sitting at about 24, which was from this peak right here. That was November 2021 reject, and then there was on March of 2024. And once we get through those levels, guys, I think it's very smooth sailing into the level between 31 and 40. There's really not much history on this one, and basically, yeah, you're cutting through butter. So, and if you can get through those levels, then, you know, sky's the limit, guys. Blue sky territory. This was, I believe, a shell before. This wasn't even part of the chart of Clean Spark. I'd say more or less you're looking at the action here for actual Clean Spark. So yeah, if you can break through 41, then, you know, you're shooting up much higher. But there's definitely been a lot of dilution with Clean Spark as well. So I'd say 31 to 40 is quite reasonable, and let's just measure out from the bottom here. So as we said, Bitcoin's sitting at about 500. So what are we sitting at here for Clean Spark? We're sitting at about 600. Okay, so 600, we're doing a little bit better than Bitcoin. If we want a double of what Bitcoin's doing right now, then you're looking at a little bit past that last zone of chop. So you'd be looking at $22, and that would be with the 2x theory of the underlying asset, and then the 3x theory of the underlying asset, you're looking at about $39. Okay. And as Bitcoin progresses higher, like I said, to 125,000, then that would be 8x. So you'd be looking at 16x as the base case scenario. So 16x is around here, which is 31. And then 24x, which is right around here, 47. Let's say 50 to round the numbers. So yeah, but there's also dilution to deal with. So I'd say these targets are a lot more reasonable here throughout the bull run. And you'd still make a pretty nice gain out of that. IREN. So IREN's forming this ascending broadening wedge, and it's been down in it for quite a while. It's been pretty much in that pattern since September of 2022, and it's just been kind of trading, and it's been range bound. It did break out here, and it did tap the resistances from the previous bull run. So that was what, March of 2022, and I mean technically that was already on the drop because the bull run ended in 2021. So yeah, between 17 and 15, those were the resistances, and yeah, pretty much hit down to the T here, and then had a pretty big retrace actually. So what did we retrace at here? So we retraced about 61%. That's a pretty nasty retrace. And currently, what is IREN doing? So we had our first gap here between 1183 and 1142. So that gap's already filled. Once again, you guys can see the buying pressure. There's definitely a big wick here to the downside, and it all got bought up by the end of the day. Second gap here, which I'm not so convinced that it's going to fill, is between 9 and 953. That's a pretty small gap. Could definitely get filled throughout the bear market. But yeah, I could definitely see IREN starting to jet here, as it had quite a bit of consolidation off that last retrace compared to WULF. So I could see it really, you know, powering up and starting to kick its next leg up. So the first targets that I'm seeing here is about 1577 to 18. I believe IREN can definitely pop off much higher. I don't think anybody should be worried. I might start doing a little bit of selling between 15 and 18. But once you get through those levels, I mean, you're pretty much cutting through butter. I wouldn't be surprised if it taps 28 on a fairly quick note. So yeah, this miner's looking pretty good. Let's look at the percentages comparing to Bitcoin. It should be exceeding it right now. So yeah, we're sitting at about 1,000%. So we're double Bitcoin. If we look at 1,500, where could it be? Well, that's where it already tapped. So that was about 1,577. Multiples from $125,000 Bitcoin, we'd be looking at 16,000. So 16,000 is right in this region. Or 1,600, sorry, and that's 16x, and then 24x for a 3x. So 24x, we'd be looking at about, I mean, you're almost looking at the peak here, so that's 25. So yeah, no, a lot of good things coming for this one. Very good management team, and I think they've been doing really good work, growing quickly. So yeah, the next couple months are going to be very exciting for this one. WULF, we're looking at flag after flag, successful breakout. Retest, successful breakout. Retest, I don't think there's going to be a retest on this one, just with the power that it's been creeping up. The first zone was a gap that it needed to fill. This was the gap from the previous bear markets. That was April 2022 to yeah, so that was a gap of 762 to 683. And yeah, we managed to get through that. Now, currently that gap is acting more as a support here. Wolf had a bounce off of it. And the first breakout target of this last flag was at about 945, and we got pretty damn close to that, 931. So it's looking quite good. It definitely has a lot of power, a lot of momentum, a lot of hype out of the smaller miners. Well, not so small anymore. I mean, it's sitting at a, 2.3 billion, maybe even higher market cap. So the first resistance, as you guys can see here, there's been a lot of touches here throughout the last cycle. So I definitely see it have a little bit of an issue getting through that. But once it gets through there, the next levels that I'm eyeing are 1227, and that's where I'll start taking my profits all the way up to about 1577. So I think those would be a pretty reasonable place to start taking profits. And now this is one of those miners that's part of that basket of AI HPC miners. And as you guys can see, it's already ran way harder than the traditional Bitcoin miners. So let's go from 55 to its peak that was already 1500. If we go to where it's at now, it's about 1142. So it's exactly double of what Bitcoin is now. If Bitcoin's going to 125, I personally think this type of basket of miners such as WULF, and the next chart I'll show you guys, IREN, they will slow down a bit just because they've already generated a lot of hype and pump action from AI's side as well. And they've definitely ran harder than the sector. So I don't think that they'll run as much as, let's say, something like Amara or CleanSpark going forward. But let's say with the target of Bitcoin at 125, so we said that was 8x. So we'd be looking at about 16x on this one. So 16x would take you to the peak of where it almost taps. That was my first resistance. And then second one, you'd be looking at about 2400. So that's $14. So yeah, guys, overall, this one's looking really good. And I think this little drop here, and now that it's consolidating, I think that's going to be more than enough to let it power through. And definitely before the end of the year, I'd see it tapping $12 and possibly even getting up to 15. BTBT. What are we looking at here? So we're looking at a pattern. We're in a rising wedge. As you guys can see, this one's been quite struggling with taking out its previous peaks from this bull run that happened in June of 2023 as well as in December of 2023. We kind of got above it here. You guys can see the volume spike, which is nice. But then we had a huge retrace and there was a gap here, 492 to 443. So we definitely chewed through that. And we dropped below the 10-day EMA. There's another gap right here, 376 to 358. I mean, it's pretty small. Could definitely wait till the bear market to fill that one, especially if Bitcoin makes its next leg up to 100 here. But once we break 100,000 on Bitcoin or we get near it, I do believe that we're going to take out this rising wedge, this ascending trend line here. So yeah, I think that's going to be very easy. And once we get through that, I think it's a very quick trip to about $9.12. And then your next really serious resistance, you're looking at about 13.50. So I would definitely start thinking of taking some profits. Maybe not quite at the 9 level, but I'd say probably, yeah, between 12 and 13.56. That's definitely where I would start taking some profits. And especially 13.50, there's quite some resistance here, especially this point that it touched here. That's one important one, another one here, and some multiple other ones throughout here. Now, how are we looking like in terms of percentages for BTBT? So we're sitting currently at 771. So as you guys can see, outdoing Bitcoin as it's part of those AI HPC plays. Now, in terms of 1,000%, you'd be looking at its recent top here, 571, 1,500. You're looking at about 785. If we look at $125,000 Bitcoin, that's a 16x, so 1,600. Where's that 1,600? It's about 838, and 2,400. You're looking at or not 24, yeah, 2,400, 24x, you're looking at about 1226. That's pretty reasonable. Overall, this one's looking really good. I see volume is increasing throughout this entire move, throughout this bull market. So that's definitely a really good thing to see. And yeah, next couple weeks should be very interesting for this one. CIFR, similar pattern to IREN. You got a ascending broadening wedge, which it got out of twice, and then this was a total fake out here, came right back in, fell below it, another fake out, and then ripped right above it. So what are we looking at here? We're sitting right on the 10-day EMA. Also got a decent wick on Friday, so it all got bought up. We got one gap here, 597 to 565, very small gap. And that's about the only gap that I can see on this one. So I'd say more or less what's likely is we'll tap and reuse this ascending broadening wedges ascending line. So that would be 612. And I would see, you know, just get us a little cool down here and then get ready for the next leg up. Now, with this one, guys, there's really not much resistance here. So I'd say the next resistance you're really looking at will probably be about 958, more or less psychological 10. And from there, I mean, sky's the limit, guys. There's really not much resistance here. So it could fire off the 13, let's say, for example, or even 15. So this one also looks really good. There's been a lot of volume lately in it. And in terms of percentages, I do think this one already did hit quite a good multiple. So not sure how the growth will be going forward. It really depends on how much more excitement they can generate through putting out news releases and kind of how their story unfolds and if they deliver on all their promises. But basically, currently we're looking at about 1,500, which is, or 1,600, which I would say at this exact moment that from bottom of the bear market to the current level, it definitely is the best miner out of the big ones on how it's doing, or in general, I think all miners. So that would already be sitting at pretty much what I'd say a 3x of current Bitcoin's price and what it was able to achieve. Now, if we're looking at multiples from $125,000 Bitcoins, that would be an 8x for the underlying asset. Once again, for a 2x theory, we're already sitting at it. For a 3x theory, we'd be sitting at about 2,400. So that would be at about a $10 level. So overall, chart's looking really good for this one. Not really much resistance, so this one could start really getting fired up. And there's a lot of analyst price targets here sitting for this one between $10 and $12. So it could be looking quite good. Another miner here, HUT, that hasn't been getting much love for quite some time, and now it's been popping off quite hard. As you guys can see, this impulsive leg here, which created some gaps. First gap here is between 27 and 28.58, and the second gap, which most likely won't get filled, is the gap between 23.75 and 25.32. Now, the 10-day EMA is creeping up here anyway, so it could bounce off here. Either way, it looks kind of like it's flagging for the time being. And we did break this bull cycle's previous two peaks, which was at 29, and the second one was at 28.49. So we blasted right through that. The volume's really been picking up. If you guys can see this area here, volume's really been picking up, so that's a good sign. Some of the key levels I'm looking at over the next little bit here and how HUD behaves when it touches them would be the levels of 42, 51, and 56.62. So I personally think that it's going to have a pretty easy time to reach 51 to 56. With the dilution happening, can it pass that? Perhaps. I think that would definitely be a good region to start planning your selling and exits. But yeah, no, overall, I'm very happy with the chart of HUT. And I think over the next 2 weeks here, there's going to be a lot of good things coming for it. And it should be getting quite powered up here to do more of that final leg up. Now, if we do some measuring from the bottom here on this one as well, what are we looking at? About 500%. So it just has slightly more than what the underlying asset has to offer. So at 2 to 3x from the current underlying asset, we'd be looking at about what 1,000 is right here. So that's 1,000, and then 1,500. I mean, you're reaching almost the previous peak, right? So either way, once you get past the level of 56 here, I mean, there's not really all that much resistance. I mean, you'd have probably a little bit here at 70, 70 to 74, and then I mean, you're cutting through butter all the way to the top here, which was a little bit over 100. So overall, yeah, no, guys, HUT looks really good, and they have a nice size hodl as well, so that should be helping them out as Bitcoin appreciates here and grows in value. So HIVE, this is definitely one of my more exciting miners, one that I'm really looking forward to some of the results it's going to have over the next little bit here, especially since it's been held down for quite a while and it hasn't had a very good return so far this cycle. And if you guys look at the previous 2 cycles that HIVE had, I mean, down to the T, I mean, they pretty much nailed $32. I mean, even exceeded in this one. So could it do it a third time? For sure. You know, it's quite possible, even just because it's one of the only miners that was ever able to recoup its previous high, previous cycle's high twice in a row. Now, if you guys look, what was HIVE doing last time? Well, HIVE had this flag pattern here before it had its final and massive leg up. And what are we doing right now? Well, we're essentially doing the exact same thing, except it's a bigger pattern, bigger flag. So the first target is the breakout target of the flag, and that's sitting at around $13. And if you guys look at the chart here, volume's definitely been speaking for itself each time it was trying to break through this descending trend line for the flag. The volume really kicked up. So you saw the volume here. Obviously, it couldn't make it. It retraced, touched the ascending part of the flag, and now again here we tried. So this time we successfully broken above it. and we stopped at about the same level as we were here in December of 2023. Now, there is a gap here, which is quite possible that we'll fill. Let's call it a retest, even though I would already consider HIVE having a retest, so there's no need to really do it. We did drop below the 10-day EMA, so I would say it's quite possible that we will fill this gap at this point. But HIVE definitely looks quite loaded and ready for its next leg up, and I'd say the next leg up would probably take you to about $15. That's where you encounter your next harder resistance, and yeah, then you're looking at a pretty good run into the 2023 level. So that's definitely somewhere where I'd be looking at taking some profits and see what HIVE can do after that. But in terms of percentages here, let's go all the way from the bottom. So the bottom was right here. So that was 181. So 500 is right around here, right? So what are we at right now? Well, we're sitting at about 200. So similar to RIOT, we're about half the result of Bitcoin. So it's a little disappointing, but that's what gives you those catch-up trades. So if we were to look at 1,000%, that's right in line with this target here of 20. And 1,500, you're looking at about a target of $28, give or take, a little higher. Yeah, $29. So yeah, the future looks bright for this one, and they've been getting more into the AI HPC side as well. So throughout the bear market, it should give them also a more diversified stream of income. So that should be good, and they can gather a little bit of hype out of that AI side as well. So yeah, definitely this next period will be very exciting for HIVE. Bitfarm, another miner that I'm not really too interested in, especially with that reverse hostile takeover offer from RIOT or whatever that was. Personally, I haven't had much interest in RIOT, as well as their chart hasn't been too exciting for me. It had a massive move at the beginning here, and then yeah, a bunch of dilution, and yeah, had that offer from RIOT, so that's been holding it down quite a bit. I'm sure there's been some games from RIOT's side just to hold the price down, so perhaps they could get a better offer out of it. And yeah, but otherwise, what are we looking at here for Bitfarm? Well, we got this flake pattern here as well as we're coming into it. So the breakout target actually out of this pattern here would be at about $6.90. And as we look here higher, that would interact with some of these levels here. So as you guys can see, $7, there's a bunch of supports and resistances here, some reactions right here, some more reactions right here. So I'd say that's a pretty reasonable level. And the second level I'd be looking at is probably around 824 here. Can it get this previous peak? I mean, there's no guarantee it will, but never say never. I'd say probably between 7 to 8 that would be a pretty reasonable point to start cashing out. Once again, guys, I don't follow this miner much, so haven't really been drawn much on the chart or paying attention to it. DMGI, the previous cycle's all-star. So yeah, this one delivered an amazing gain last cycle. They were able to generate a bunch of hype, and yeah, this reached, I believe it was around a 500 million market cap. And if you guys look at the entire run, what it was able to do, obviously they diluted massively since then, but it was able to pop about 123x, almost 124x, which is insane, you guys. This is where it IPO'd here, so it tapped around $2, and then yeah, in the following cycle doubled that and ran to about 533. Also, if you guys noted, it had a very long consolidation period, one of the longest out of any miner before it blasted off, and then yeah, just generated a series of flake patterns and successfully broke out of them, and yeah, never really retested or looked back and just flew here on the final day. Now, could we do that this cycle? It's possible. Once again, they've diluted quite a bit since then, so it will be harder to get to that level. However, what I would like to basically show you guys is, notice the volume here. This is the first time we really got some serious volume, and it's a volume of about 4 million. I'd say since the bear market, this is the highest green day volume it had, so buying volume it had since the previous bull market. Now, the first breakout targets, I mean, technically you're in a bit of a flag here. So the first breakout target, I'd say you're sitting at about $1 here, and we already managed to get through 77 cents. So that first roadblock is going to be about 77 cents. As you guys can see here, there was some supports here for 77 cents as well, and now it was resistance here for this cycle. So that's the first level, obviously, to break through. Once you break through that, I think it's a quick trip to $1, which is a psychological level. And there from there on, I wouldn't say there's really all that much resistances and supports. So you're looking at about $1.36. That's the next level to consider. $2, which was the IPO price here. And then we did spend a little bit of time consolidating throughout last cycle in there, then 243. And once you get through that, I mean, sky's the limit. Could we go higher? It really all depends. The question you guys got to ask yourself is how high can something like, let's say, Mara get to? If Mara, because Mara's sitting at about a 7 billion market cap, if Mara can get to, let's say, a 15 or 21 billion market cap, then it's not really out of the question for one of these miners, these small caps, to reach about 1/10 of their market cap, especially since everything else will already be at such a high multiple. So people will start cashing out of Maras, then they'll put the money into, for example, IREN, WULF, generate a little bit more, or HUT or whatever has a little bit smaller market cap, and then it will ripple down into something like HIVE, which is one of the last miners that has a multi-100 million market cap. It hasn't even reached 1 billion. And then finally, you will reach these names such as DMGI, which has a market cap below 100 million. I believe it's sitting somewhere at 70 million. They recently diluted a bit. That's why there was quite a bit of red volume here. But I mean, that's going to get eaten up. Nobody cares as long as it goes towards the expansion. The new shareholders that join in will not remember that. Nobody's going to care. And then just the hype is going to carry it forward. And this miner is definitely really good at putting out some exciting stories. So let's see what they can deliver, especially on their software side, as they've been putting out a lot of news releases about all this software, but I haven't really seen the results yet. But yeah, once the ball gets rolling on this one, and it had a very nice long period consolidation, it established a lot of good basis, and especially here since December of 2023, almost 1 year. Look at this, guys. Almost 1 year we've been sitting in this, look at the right here, in this area, almost 1 year. So when this is ready to blast, I would call it a very similar launchpad to what we had here in 2020. So once this is ready to blast, I wouldn't be surprised if this is able to tap its previous all-time high and even exceed it, maybe reach $7.50. Could be an extreme target, but you know, in the penny world, never say never. I think based off the dilution they did, if we're just looking at a 500 million market cap, I think it would stop you out right below 3, maybe 260, something like that. I would have to do the exact math. But I mean, at the end of the day, when the bull run comes in and, you know, serious money gets deployed in these miners, valuations, earning potential, I mean, all that goes outside of the window, and all that matters is the story. So I wouldn't sleep on this one, you guys, just considering its results from the last cycle. It could be one of the more explosive small nano cap miners in the space. CBIT, well, as you guys know, or if you don't know, haven't watched the previous videos, this is my number one Bitcoin miner stock pick for the year of 2025. Well, technically into the end of this year and early next year. I personally think that this miner will deliver the highest multiple, the greatest return out of all the miners that have been covered here. And the reason for that is just because it's a smaller miner. Their market cap is, around 21 million. It's got around 240 million or 230 million shares out. And it's had this consolidation that really reminds me of what DMGI was able to achieve last cycle. And the consolidation is between 7 cents and 14.5 cents. And I think as soon as it's let off the leash here, and for whatever reason it's getting held down, once they allow it to rip, once it rips, I don't think it's looking back. Especially considering last cycle they were able to deliver about a 5x in a matter of 3 weeks with very little marketing. There was almost no news releases. Pretty much nobody knew of this miner. So if the management can execute and they can put out a good story, bring out news releases, and really gain the attention of the market, I think sky's the limit on this one. And just to bring your guys' attention to these falling wedges. So there was a falling wedge here that happened last cycle, and that led to this massive breakout here. And then there was a second falling wedge here that's essentially in the forming right now. So it's just a matter, in my opinion, of a week or 2 weeks before this starts moving. And all it would have to do is just take out the stop here at 22.5, which I don't think will be too difficult for it to do with all the suppression that it had. And actually, to be honest with you guys, I think once it breaks out of here, it could really produce a God candle. And I wouldn't be so surprised if that God candle took you somewhere into the 20s or 30 cent range. So you'd be looking at the next resistance here at about 30. And then following that, I mean, you'll have resistance here about every 10 cents, just because of the way it was chopping here, and it had almost a double top. So yeah, you'll have another resistance here about 50, another one about 60. So all these psychological levels, another one, about 80. Then you're reaching about 90, and then yeah, sky's the limit. I wouldn't say there's all that much pattern or support resistance past 82. So if we're able to get to that, which is from this level about a 10x, and my personal target on any of these small nano caps is at least 10 to 20x, just because they can outdo the larger miners, which have already, let's say, done between 5 to 10x. So if those ones are able to do these higher multiples, then so these should be able to outdo them by a mile. Looking at something like CBIT, I mean, its market cap is 20 million, guys. If Mara can get to 15 to 21 billion, I mean, 1/10 of that, I mean, this thing can really send it, guys. The numbers are quite crazy here, and I don't want to sound like a moon boy, but it's just the truth. Like, small market cap stocks like this can really move. And just to wrap up the charts here, you guys, this is the stock I mentioned earlier throughout the video that pretty much got bled out to infinity. It dropped 99.8%, so almost 100% it dropped down from its previous bull run. It's called the BTC.cn, so Blue Sky Digital. And if you guys look, that's what I was saying, so let's look at the top here. So I mean, the top's around here. If we look all the way, it dropped to what, about 2 cents, 2.5 cents, yeah, 99.8, 99.9%, okay? So yeah, it pretty much bled out to infinity. Falling knife, definitely didn't want to try to catch that, otherwise you would have gotten your position murdered. I mean, it would be very difficult to make money off this one unless you really caught it here at these lower levels. But boy, once it got moving, and this is what I was referring to, guys, there's so much potential in the penny world that it could blow your mind. I mean, you can turn 5,000 into 500,000, and these things are possible just in the penny world. So if you guys look at how long this even took, so this happened, what, October 23rd, 2024, and then it hit its peak November 14th. I mean, that's about 2 weeks of trading, something like that, 16 bars, a little over 2 weeks of trading. And what was it able to generate? It was able to generate, so from, what did we say, about 2 cents. If you were able to catch the bottom and sell the top, which most people weren't able to do. I personally never touched this one. I think it's a terrible stock. I wouldn't ever want to own it. But nevertheless, it delivered 42x in a span of about two weeks and a bit. So if you guys think it's unreasonable to say that DMGI or CBIT could deliver a 10 to 20x from this level throughout the bull run, not saying throughout 2 weeks, but throughout the bull run, then I don't know what to tell you guys, but the potential is there. You just got to see it. And those are two companies that deliver a real business. They're not just a pump and dump. So yeah, I definitely make use out of this example, just to convince yourself that there really is potential in the Bitcoin miner penny stock world to really deliver a good gain. And don't overlook them, guys, because they can really send it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.